Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Brazen. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about what is transformational coaching. A lot of people have probably never heard of it before, and that's Valerie's specialty. And so we're going to listen to her explain what it is she does with people and how transformational coaching really can benefit you. And if you would like to dip your toe into the water, maybe some tips to help you self-coach, because that is a thing, self-coaching. And there's a helpful framework to help you go through it step by step. So we're going to cover all of that and probably more. But first of all, Valerie, why don't you start off by kind of just explaining what a transformational coach is and what you do with your clients?
So, yes, first off, I have to admit that when I first started to get into coaching, I knew I wanted to do some life coaching, particularly like at the beginning of the pandemic when everyone was sort of reevaluating where they were in life. So I enrolled in a course out of London from Animas Center, but I didn't know that there was different types of life coaching. So I didn't really know what transformational coaching was when I signed up. So, but it is a really amazing process. And I think what sets transformational coaching apart from the rest of the types of life coaching is that you're working on actually transforming or helping the person transform themselves. So it's instead of just like a transactional session where you're like, I want to reach point B from where I am at point A, and like, I want you to hold me accountable. There is a bit of that, and often that like becomes a part of our sessions, but it's more of like, how can we help you be more confident, or in every area of your life, not just in achieving this goal? Or how can we help you with these blocks that consistently come up when you are trying to achieve certain goals? And often those blocks or limiting beliefs are similar between no matter what you're trying to achieve. So it's not just like the one limiting belief that comes up because you're trying to start a business. It's more likely that, you know, you have imposter syndrome in other areas of your life. So we use our coaching sessions to really tackle those limiting beliefs. And transformational coaching starts from the mindset that every person has everything they need within them to accomplish whatever they want to accomplish, but they just need to sort of overcome their own challenges and obstacles to get there. And the role of the coach is to create this safe space where we can talk through what those limiting beliefs are and how best to overcome them. And it's just a great process. And to kind of, I can't even explain how amazing it is to see person at point like session 1 from all the way to session 6 or session 12 or however long we work together. It truly is, not to overuse the word transformational, but it is amazing to see where someone can get in that short amount of time. So that's the background, a little bit of transformational coaching.
And how is transformational coaching, or any kind of coaching really, different from therapy?
Yes. So this is something they cover with you when you're a coach in training on day one, because there's a lot of similarities between mentoring someone or therapy or coaching. So this is kind of a general way of describing it, but I like to think of coaching as forward thinking. So it's like, how are we going to get to where you want to be in the future? And yes, you do talk a little bit about your past in terms of like, oh yeah, you have a tendency to lack confidence in these situations, or you have a tendency to be really confident in these situations. So we're going to like use that as proof that you actually are good at something in particular. But therapy, I think, tends to be a little bit more like, how can we kind of unpack your past and move forward from like previous trauma or things like that. So we don't really cover that piece of it. And then in terms of the mentoring, because we're not experts in necessarily the field that our clients want to focus on, like, we're not mentoring them. We're just kind of, like I said, holding space for them. And we have the tools to pinpoint goals or to pinpoint limiting beliefs, or, you know, just by asking millions of questions, we can kind of unpick the phrases that people use and the words that they like say to themselves about certain things. So we work really deeply on that type of material, as opposed to, you know, like I said, the past.
Yeah, and something that a lot of people probably don't realize is this is how we kind of came to get to know each other. So Valerie and I have some mutual friends in common, and they let me know that Valerie was doing this transformational coaching course and she needed some people to be like her guinea pigs so they get free life coaching. And I'm just thinking, like, yeah, I mean, I feel like things are a mess right now. So I could definitely use some free life coaching. So that's how we started working together. And I remember when I first came to you and we were in our first session, you were trying to suss out what the issue was for me or like what I wanted to focus on. And a lot of it revolved around improving my work-life balance because I was feeling super stressed out working in healthcare during the pandemic. I was really kind of burnt out, and I just needed an outlet almost to vent some of my frustration and my feelings around that. And so I kind of went into it thinking, like, okay, this is just going to be a good way for me to figure out how to balance everything better. And then a couple of sessions in, we were talking about how I was going to start my business. So it was kind of a crazy progression there. But that's the power of transformational coaching, I think, is because it takes whatever your surface level issue is, your complaint or your problem area or whatever you want to focus on. And just by holding the space for us to kind of explore what's going on for me and what is underlying all of that, it allowed us to get to the actual deeper issue. And that was that I felt like I didn't have the flexibility and the freedom that I ultimately wanted, and what was standing in the way of that, and how can we take steps to move you closer to that ultimate goal. And so literally by like the third or maybe the fourth session, I was a business owner. I'd started my LLC. I was working on like learning about marketing strategies and this, that, and the other. And so it was really, it completely changed the trajectory of my life at this point. So, you know, I really can't speak highly enough of the benefits of it. And it's really cool to be able to point to this one decision to get the transformational coaching and be like, this was the point where everything kind of changed for me. And I started taking messy action and not worrying about making sure things were perfect. I just wanted to kind of get moving and start the momentum, and having the accountability for one, but then also the your experience and knowing what kinds of good questions to ask to help get deeper and uncover the issues that I might not have even been aware of, or limiting beliefs that I didn't know were limiting beliefs. That's so helpful, just to have a sounding board who can help you do that work.
Yeah, and I just didn't and hearing you recap our time together, I remember, and we've mentioned this in a previous podcast, but your thing was like over planning, and you like wanted to kind of spend all this time, researching how to write a business plan and everything, and we were like, no, like let's get you taking messy action, and that's, I think, where the transformation comes from. And in that sense, you like we're able to understand, and as we've seen as our business has progressed, like we're just kind of all about taking action now instead of like planning everything. And so the hopes with transformational coaching is that we give our clients ultimately the tools they need to kind of keep that positive momentum. So it's really cool to hear you retell that. So I can't speak enough about coaching, and I promise this isn't just a plug to get you to work with us as coaches, but you know, coaching is just such a like important part of the recipe for achieving your ideal life. And people like Oprah always talk about how important having a life coach is. She's had one for a really long time. But if you are not ready to sort of jump into getting your own life coach, there are some things you can do to kind of coach yourself. And one of them that I use with my clients kind of on a basic level, and it's a great tool to have in your toolbox, is the acronym GROW. And it stands for goals, reality, options, and then way forward. So it's a great idea to keep that in your back pocket. And just to describe a little bit about how it works is G for goals, essentially means obviously coming up with what your goals are. In the case of Callie, she wanted to achieve more work-life balance. And then it's important to just spend a little time examining your goal and making sure it's measurable. Like, when will you know that you've actually achieved your goal? And so I know with Callie, a lot of times I'd be like, okay, so how will you know when you've achieved your work-life balance? And so having some sort of concrete benchmarks and ways to measure your goal. And then also just asking yourself why you want this particular goal. I think, it's really important as a coach that we dig deep into your why and why you're trying to achieve this goal, how it fits into your bigger picture, how it like would affect your, relationships or your family, or just really getting some, I don't know, just, I'm trying to think of the word.
Like context or something.
Context, that's the word. Yeah. It's a great way to get context around your goal. So working on that is really important. And then from there, it's reality. So it's kind of both where you are right now and how accessible you think that goal actually is, but also like how far you need to travel to reach that goal. So I always talk about point A and point B, but if you're at point A now and point B is like a very aggressive, big, scary goal, it might be that it's like a 3-year goal, not a 1-year goal. So just getting a sense of what your reality is, also what your resources are. So art can also be resources, but who can help you achieve your goal, what you need for that goal. It can be like, I need to get an education in this, I need additional money, I'll need funding, whatever kind of resources you need to achieve that goal. And then O is options. So that's where you get deep into, how am I going to get there? Like, what are my ways forward? Often there's not just one. So starting to write down all the ways. I love brainstorming. So this is one of my favorite activities to do with my clients is we each write down, 20 to 30 ideas at least on what the next step is to achieve their goals. And then from there, we can kind of like weigh the pros and cons. And then the W stands for way forward. And that's where we ultimately are like, what's your first step? What's your first messy step? In the case of Callie's story, that was just getting her LLC. And so that is kind of how you can guide yourself through the whole goal setting process. And we will definitely have a link in our show notes on this particular exercise and kind of digging deeper into like your goal setting. So you can check that out as well.
I love how you encourage us to, when we're writing out all of the opportunities, the different options, 20 to 30, it seems like this massive number, but I think that forces you to get creative and really start to think outside of the box, which is such an important piece of it. And we're always telling people to get curious. And this is a really kind of a different twist on that, but it's so important because a lot of times we get used to thinking small. And if we have to come up with 25 different ideas on how we can reach this goal, then we're going to really just be forced to think way outside the box and go outside our comfort zone, which could be the best thing. That was one of the things for me, is one of the options that we came up with for how I could achieve better work-life balance was to just start my own business. And then I could have the flexibility that I wanted because I would be acting as my own boss, requesting vacation time, approved, that kind of thing. So I just really love that you're emphasizing coming up with this massive list. And it kind of helps get the creative juices flowing.
Yeah, I think the magic happens in the brainstorming always. I think it trains your brain to be able to see the creative options available to you. And I think also doing it with a coach, I mean, you certainly can do it by yourself, but doing it with a coach also means that you just get like added, ideas to choose from. But the more you can force yourself to do this exercise in any part of the goal setting process, I think the more likely you're going to achieve some pretty magical results. And I think, continuing to just be curious about what's out there and, asking other people, what are some thoughts you have on what my first step should be, can also add to your ever growing list of options.
So that's kind of just a little primer for you on transformational coaching. And we will definitely be talking more in depth about transformational coaching and functional wellness as we continue on throughout this podcast. Lots of different topics are going to come up that we're going to pull on those different areas of expertise. So stay tuned and go to the show notes if you would like to download the resource that's going to help you walk through the GROW formula for self-coaching step by step. That's going to be linked in the show notes. So that's it for another episode of Brazen. Please rate and review if you really like this podcast. It helps to share it with other people. And come back next week, same time and same place. We'll see you then.
Thank you.